So
Go on, you know
I
know you don't want to talk about crime particularly, do
I
you?
don't really like it's the
But
end of the
there
week,
is like
and
sort of an almost criminal act to
there
what
was a
happened to
criminal
me.
act. I mean, you were both perhaps more so, Niall, victims of crime this week, were you not? I realised you were.
Well,
Niall
it
was
certainly-
misrepresented, shall we say.
So will I describe what happened since
You do.
at least it's more...
Sometimes I think it's better when someone else describes
Well,
it.
I'll describe it because
Okay.
I'll give a more charitable version of my...
Okay.
So we were at our work summer party, which is... Summer parties are a thing, are they now, for work?
Yeah.
It used to be...
Why are you laughing?
I'm just thinking, I think we should allow Emer bring her cat to work.
I need my emotional support, Kat, for this conversation.
So what happened was, because like Nicola Talent is such a superstar, isn't she a big celebrity?
She is very, like, she was getting approached left, right and centre. I
Yeah.
thought she was going to have to do like
So
bouncer job.
it's like, you know, if you walk down Talbot Street, it's like if like Queen Elizabeth II or something like that. It's like walking down with somebody.
It's a North Inner City
Sort
version
of-
of
yeah,
royalty,
sort of
basically.
Sort of Dublin's North Inner City Princess Diana or something.
I'm
But
glad you
anyway,
went
so she's
from the
very,
Queen
so
to
she's
the
very,
Princess.
so she's very. Anyway, let's put quite the big deal. Let's put it just. Let's keep it that simple. And sometimes, if you know, if we do that, Nick's very friendly to her adoring public, but she does sometimes then gets a bit tired of it as well, and she tries to drag me in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
but I don't think you're too resisting. In
No.
fairness.
I'm
You love talking to the people.
I'm very humble. I like.
He knows exactly when he's getting dragged in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they'll say, and then she say, and there's Niall, just to kind of extend the conversation.
Yeah.
So she had somebody telling her in the pub how she just loved Nicola and she was a wonderful fan, and Nicola nodded along, and then eventually said, and there's my sidekick, just trying to extend the conversation.
Yeah.
And this lady looked at me and said, oh yeah. And then Nicola said, you don't know who he is? Which is outrageous anyway.
Yeah,
of course.
course.
Considering.
Oh my goodness.
It's obviously not a YouTube watcher because the visual treat would have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Visual treat would have stuck in the head. You know, that's what other people describe me as. I
Yeah.
am sure. I haven't actually read it from the comments. But
Yeah.
so
Your mother,
anyway,
maybe.
she looked at me and she said, oh yeah. And Nicola, you know, who had been quite quiet then and looking for somebody else, said, you don't know who he is? And she said, oh, I do. It's Colin.
She could have mistaken you for Colin Farrell.
No,
so.
but like that actually it took me a couple of hours because, you know, I've been called Colin. We were stopped in the coffee shop by one of the people from the Indo, said, how are you, Colin?
Colin,
This
like,
morning.
there's
No, it's going to
like-
stick forevermore.
Oh,
you know?
it's very funny.
So what happened? Yeah, so
Colin.
I did actually come up with Colin Farrell about 2 hours later. I was
Yeah.
talking to one of our sports department and I said, maybe she mistook me for Colin Farrell. And he said, it's after taking you 2 hours to come up with that response. So it doesn't work as well.
No, it
it's
doesn't.
Could have been
brilliant.
either or Colin Firth. I Googled
Yeah.
Yes.
glamorous male celebrities called Colin. And they
Yeah.
were
Do
the
you
top
remember
two.
our former editor, Colin McGinty, would
Yeah.
often struggle with names.
Yeah.
And like, but the names that he would come up with for people
Yeah.
were so weird
Yeah,
when they
yeah,
came
yeah,
out. They were
yeah.
sort of biblical
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
like he'd look at you and go, oh, Elijah. Or something. Really strange
There
stuff.
was
Yeah.
someone called Ezekiel.
Well,
or is that
Well,
where
that's
it-
what that was the
That was a
slag.
kind of a
Yeah.
slag. So
Yeah.
that's why
because he
Enda
kept
Bulger
getting-
is called Zeke because
'cause
he was called
En-
Ezekiel. Because
And the Bulger Art, and as it says at the end of the
Oh,
podcast,
yeah.
he was being called, we used to call him Ezekiel, Isaiah, whatever.
Yeah, 'cause-
Because-
But yeah, it's kind of
so Colin, though, I mean,
yeah.
if somebody's looked at me and thought,
I hate
he looks
Or else
like
I
a
just
Colin.
like searched for a name and came up
No,
with
they,
that one.
but
I
they
don't
looked
think
at my
that-
face and thought,
put your glasses on.
Yeah.
Just
with me.
for goodness sake.
Oh God, he's
'Cause he
trying
looks-
to
no,
shed.
didn't have
With
to
his
be.
glasses on, he looks like he
He
could
looks
be
like-
a Colin.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with a Colin.
Well,
though.
Colin would have been slightly better.
Why? Because it would have been cooler.
Just a little bit cooler than Colin. It's a little touch.
So
You're
did all
offending
Collins
Colin
out there.
Farrell now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She could have mistaken me for Colin Farrell,
Yeah.
but that's
yeah. I don't.
He's-
I'm not sure.
So we had a good evening at our summer Christmas fest,
Yeah.
and apart
Summer
from that
Christmas
little
Fest.
Well,
summer
summer
festival
fest.
even. Why does every party have to feel like a Christmas party, a work party?
yeah. Well, it's kind of the bigger party than the Christmas party now because we have our Christmas party like here.
I don't think I've been at that Oh, I was.
It's in the kitchen, like,
Yeah.
so
Oh, yeah,
the
that's-
summer one is the big one.
That's true, actually. Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was good fun.
Nicola.
I still haven't got around to have the crime world party, and I'm still going to have it. I just have not got around to doing it.
Oh, yeah.
But it's going to happen.
No paintballing though, as we discussed
No
the last
paintball.
time.
No, we've done that. We're just actually going for sophistication all the way. And I'm going to book something, and it's going to be.
Well, send it to
Colin,
me,
I'll send it
Colin at SundayWorld.com.
SundayWorld.com. You might have to send it to 2 different emails just in case. Oh,
Okay.
Why not?
So,
Now we're here to
Colin,
talk about
what
crime,
do
aren't
you
we?
want to talk about? No, seriously. We're going to do a little bit of a roundy uppy on what's gone on because yet again, as usual, there's been loads of stuff we never got around to touching this week. So we're going to kind of
Well, I mean,
bulk it all in. One of the stories really that stands out has to be this kind of arrest. We're recording this on Friday, so there's a man in custody being questioned in connection with the disappearance of Annie McCarrick. Now, that case was upgraded to murder, wasn't it, Emer?
It was upgraded to murder, yeah, in the last couple of years. So this man's in his 60s, so he would have been in his 30s at the time, and he disappeared in March 1993. So she's missing, was that like going on 25 years? 35 years.
I'm going to let you struggle with that.
Yeah, sorry.
1993.
After the summer party, I probably should be trying to do maths.
It's about 32 years.
32 years, 33 years.
I was at it with the fingers there.
Yeah.
We can blame the baby Guinnesses
Yeah.
on that one. But so Annie's been missing since then, and this is the first arrest in the case. And he's still in custody at the moment, but they have a search operation ongoing at a property in Clondalkin in West Dublin. And I suppose the latest information that we have is Robin Schiller's reporting that they've brought in a cadaver dog to search. They've cornered off, they've put metal grates up around the garden of the home. The current residents of the home have nothing to do. This is linked to the suspect going back a long time, and the people there currently had nothing to do with this investigation. But yeah, there's metal grates up around the garden, there's diggers brought in, and they have a cadaver dog, and which means they're looking for human remains.
But it's one of the famous cases, of course. Annie
Yeah,
McCarrick,
and this
like-
person has been a person of interest as such in this case from the beginning. We can't obviously go into detail in any way, shape or form, go near identifying who this individual is, but safe to say he's always been somebody the Gardaí have been interested in. He never became a suspect.
No.
This is the first time he has been arrested.
Yes.
So he's upgraded essentially from person of interest to suspect. There must be some new information that has come to light.
Yeah, so was known to Annie, and I suppose we had reported, RTE reported in February that Gardaí had went to France to interview a man in relation to the case. He was friends with Annie, and we believe that. We're not sure if it's directly related to that, but we believe that they have credible information following an appeal and following these investigations. And that's why this search operation and this arrest have taken place. But we do know that, the man was known to Annie, and he has been, he's been a person of interest, but, he's
So
gone
this
on and
is-
lived his life in the last 30 years.
We'll go into a little bit of Annie McCarrick and what happened to her in a minute, but there's been searches for Jojo Dullard
Yeah.
earlier this year. And
the
there was-
Fiona Penders.
And the Fiona Pender.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary they're all kind of, is it the passage of time?
Well, maybe it might be a change in the strategy of the Gardaí. I mean, we don't know that specifically. Obviously, these appeals go out all the time, and if the guards get information, which they have in all of those 3 cases, they've spoken about why they made decisions to dig again as a result of information coming forward. So we don't know, but it could well be a strategic change. Obviously, maybe taking a more proactive approach.
Yeah. And I suppose it brings it back into the public domain again and again. And, if you make an initial arrest, you can put stuff to somebody. And I guess, in this case of Jojo Dullard as well, there was a person in that case that they wanted to put things to, and nothing came of that. That person was released without charge. But I guess, as Niall says, it's maybe they're of that opinion now that we have nothing to lose here in these cases. These cases are going on such a long time that we'll put what we have now, and hopefully maybe with it in the public domain, something else might come to light. But in this case, they are going on solid information. And, we are reporting that this person was alleged to have harassed Annie before she went missing. And, there's also information around, there was a documentary done, an RTE documentary done in the last couple of years where Annie's mother had spoken of, how she had been harassed by somebody, and then there was also an aunt talking about how she there may have been a victim of a drunken assault. So there has been these kind of theories floating around, but this is the first time that I suppose we have a solid arrest and also a search operation as well.
And let's talk about that cadaver dog being brought in, because interestingly, just days before, the Garda Commissioner Drew Harris had been speaking about cadaver dogs and how the force may consider purchasing one of them because for searches and murder investigations in the future.
Yeah.
Cadaver dog was brought in the Tina Satchwell case. Yes. These are sort of hunting dogs. I actually know somebody who has some of these dogs that can be used at events, public events, to sniff for bombs and stuff like that. Yeah. And they've an incredible amount of sensories around their nose. Like they are just extremely special dogs, and the training of them is extraordinary.
Yeah, it takes 3 years apparently. It's a real finite resource.
There's 4 of them in the north of Ireland, and presumably when the guards are using them, they don't own one. So
no, they had it in the Tina Satchwell case. I mean, they spoke about the dog being brought down and the procedures that they have to go through by the handler, and procedures they have to go through to make the dog available to the Gardaí. Yeah. I mean, it is interesting that that featured so strongly in the Satchwell case just recently, and of course the Satchwell case and the Garda's, failure, I suppose, to find Tina's body over a number of years, and also the Mike Gain case Drew Harris has spoken about recently about, launching a review into how that occurred, how they Did
they had cadaver dogs down on that as well? At one point down around the Malls Gap.
They did. So,
because he was talking about that when he was asked about the cadaver dog on the foot of Tina Satchwell case, he was actually sort of saying they're really specialised, they're not used very often. He only said they'd been used a handful of times, 3 or 4 times in the last while, but we've named so many cases there that they have been used in.
And Jim O'Callaghan, the Justice Minister, was talking about that as well, about the difficulties in getting them and how we don't have one in Ireland, and I think the one...
So are we using them from the north, the 4 in the north?
I believe so, yeah.
Well, we definitely used them for the north in the Richard Satchwell case. They had, they spoke about the procedures they have to do because it's part of the evidence, obviously, on how they found the body,
Because we do have dog unit. And they can be used for sniffing, like for
airport,
for drugs,
for example,
and firearms and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and they're all spaniels and those kind of
hunting dogs, I suppose.
The labs are used, springers, sprockers, shepherds, German Malinois and Belgian Malinois are the typical breeds, apparently. But they're an extraordinary. Imagine a Labrador. Imagine a Labrador would be used for because Labradors they're used they can be used as support animals, but they can be used
I had a Labrador actually for a long time.
Guide dogs, and various other things. They're obviously I love Labradors.
Oh my God, they're my favourite.
The sweetest, aren't they? Nature dogs,
they're just so
and they're the greediest.
Yeah,
you have to lock up everything in the house with a Labrador because they will actually eat themselves sick and then keep going again. They are so greedy.
But it was brilliant.
They're obviously very intelligent.
And the description was given in the Richard Satchwell murder trial of how the dog was brought around various places in the house. I think they said they started at the top. Was it a 2-story house? Or
it was maybe 3 stories.
3-story house, and brought around. And as soon as the dog was brought under the stairs, the dog had an instant reaction, and it's trained to effectively give notice that they smelt what could be a body. And that was a really essential bit of the case. I mean, they had to, maybe there was no sense when we actually went through the trial that they had a location in mind. But obviously that was a really key finding. So the
Annie McCarrick case has largely been centred on the Dublin Mountains and the Johnny Fox's pub. And she was going for a walk. She'd got a bus. But certainly eyewitnesses had seen her on a bus from Sandymount, Enniskerry.
So someone who I think she'd worked with her, or someone who knew her had seen her get on a bus which was going to Enniskerry, and then there was sightings of her later that day. There was one, obviously this became a big point of this story about how she was seen in Johnny Fox's pub that night, but that was never... There was a lot of talk about how there was, I think it was the doorman who was sure it was her, and then she was later seen earlier that day. There was another sighting of her in a cafe in Enniskerry Village that day. But what we're reporting today now is that if this, with the search going on Clondalk, and there's now an alternative theory that
exactly.
she didn't actually ever go to Enniskerry. And I suppose if that does turn out to be the case, it can just show how sometimes when cases diverge into certain theories, they can maybe distract from what's actually going on. But we don't know either.
And interestingly, you talk about those sightings, and from memory from working on that case, doing stories over the years, and remember speaking to Alan Bailey, the former cold case detective sergeant who was on it. The last kind of sighting that the police were believed to be totally credible was the one of her getting on the bus.
Yeah.
So they had her kind of in Sandymount village getting on the bus, and that's how they got her to Enniskerry, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I remember the doorman's, while Christy Mangan, who's spoken to us and works with us on these cases, says that people want to be helpful. They want to come forward with information. And 99.9% of the information is not for any reason other than they believe it to be the case.
Yeah.
So a lot of those sightings that happened up around Enniskerry and the doorman and all the rest of it, they weren't actually, they were
circumstantial.
They were sort of never
confirmed, I suppose.
No.
Confirmed as a last sighting.
Yeah.
It was possible that she was there, but the people didn't know her.
Yeah.
Say the pub was busy, there was a lot of people going through, a lot of Americans probably, and it was a very...
Yeah, of course. And he's the doorman would be seeing how many women coming in, so...
Yeah.
It couldn't be a confirmed sighting.
Exactly. And there was no kind of backup to it. I think that was the thing in the pub. There was nobody else sort of seeing somebody that sort of fitted her description in the pub. But anyway, so I think the Gardaí were satisfied they had her in Sandy Mount Village.
Yeah, getting on the bus. And I suppose what we know from, she had bought groceries in the shop on the Friday morning. She was due to have friends over on Saturday for dinner, and when the friends called on Saturday, she wasn't there. She didn't turn up for work. She had worked in a couple of restaurants. She didn't turn up for work on the Saturday and the Sunday. And then when her two housemates returned on Sunday evening, the friends called and then they discovered the bag of shopping there. And when they checked the receipt in the bag, I think it was morning time, around 11 a.m. So that was on the Friday. So they knew for sure that she'd come back and done that.
And funny, the shopping was a thing because she'd done this shop, but she hadn't put it away.
Yeah.
And it was always kind of a bit odd that she was going for this day out up to the mountains to go for a walk and hadn't gone to the bother of putting the milk in the fridge.
That's very true. Yeah.
I remember that coming up a few times in the case as being a kind of just a bit distracting when you were bringing her to Enniskerry to go walking and maybe into the pub later on that evening.
And of course, placing her in Enniskerry then placed her Larry Murphy as a suspect. And I mean, that is partly why the case has been so prominent in the media over the years.
Yeah.
Larry Murphy certainly was in that general area. His movements, I suppose, if she had been in Enniskerry, would have coordinated with his own movements at the time. Larry Murphy, as a result, was a person of interest as well. And certainly at some point, he became maybe the primary person of interest in that case. And as such, his notoriety certainly grew, and he became, obviously his notoriety didn't just come as a result of this. It came as a result of a absolutely horrific crime where he was convicted of the rape and attempted murder of a woman that he abducted. So it isn't that this made him notorious, but certainly his name was always being put in the mix for the Annie McCarrick murder. And, that obviously the Guards now at this point are going in a totally different direction. This guy's a man in his 60s, but it's not Larry Murphy.
No, and it's interesting because the three, obviously there was, I think, was it 6 women that went missing around in those couple of years in the general Leinster area, and of those, the ones he was linked to were Jojo Dollar, Deirdre Jacob and Annie McCarrick. And in the same case as Jojo Dollar, they also, when they made an arrest, it wasn't him, and he has been effectively, I think, ruled out as a suspect there. So the only one he's actually been definitively linked to is Deirdre Jacob. But I think it was a serial killer theory that kind of became a...
That was a theory because he had got pissed up in prison one night, and he had sort of boasted about it to a fellow prisoner who then gave a statement to the Garda's cold case unit. They went in to see this man, and the statement was look, this guy that he told it to wasn't exactly clean cut. The guy was in prison with him and he had committed serious offences as well. Wasn't a very trustworthy character. So you're in a bit of a catch-22 situation with it. But what they did do was they analysed what he had to say about what he claimed Larry Murphy had said to him. And he said, without having the ability to know it, that Larry Murphy used to put baby seats and toys in the back seat of his car. They believed that was they had profiled him that was part of his MO in whatever it was he was doing. He's only ever been convicted of the one crime, but he was suspected of kind of trying to lure women into his car or whatever, and that he had this setup had been found whenever he was caught for raping that woman. That time he was actually nabbed, and they had sent all these details of what they got, the various crime scenes, over to a profiler in Scotland, part of the Met Police, who had come back, and that bit about Murphy scattering toys around the back seat and putting the child's car seat in was unique to him as his modus operandi. So when the other prisoner stated this without being able to have any ability of knowing that, they thought, well, there's some credibility here.
And of course, this man is arrested in connection with this search in Clondalkin. He hasn't, that's again another line of inquiry that has to be followed through. So you don't know where that leads ultimately. But yeah, I mean, it's a significant development in the case for somebody to be arrested after over 30 years. They're obviously in there searching for remains, and that would be a hugely significant development.
Look, we talk about the likes those searches, and let's talk about the case of Mike Gain and of Tina Satchwell, which both came up around the same time. Obviously, Mike Gain was missing when the Tina Satchwell trial started. His body was ultimately found. In the first place, the police looked, the Gardaí looked, and what happened in the aftermath was the military were brought in, volunteers, there was a huge amount of manpower put into it. This mystery of where he was became, how long did it go on for? 40 days or something?
Well, it went on. It was from March. He went missing around March 20, towards the end of March. So it was 2 months, basically.
Well, I think it was about 10 weeks in total.
Yeah.
Then we have the Satchwell case, where Tina Satchwell all the time is under the stairs in the house where
so they were both where...
So they were both where they sort of,
close to
might have expected to have been.
Might have been expected to have been. And I think, actually, it was when I was away, was there some talk about reviews of those two investigations?
There is. I mean, that it's been said, and they're going to look at what went wrong. Certainly, with the Satchwell case, I mean, like people, we've had our interviews. Alan Sherry, who was on the podcast there this week, but he's spoken about his interactions with Richard Satchwell, talking to him in 2017 and thinking, this guy is very, very suspect. So it wasn't a mystery like that Richard Satchwell should have been considered. And obviously she disappeared without cards and wallets and all of that. So look, there is questions to answer. And sometimes, it's the job of journalism as well to say is something.
And who has ordered the review? Is it Jim O'Callaghan?
Gardaí are reviewing it. Drew Harris has ordered it, and that the results of that will be put in a report compiled for Minister for Justice Jim O'Callaghan.
How long will that take?
Well, it doesn't say. I mean, it's what they have said is undergoing a peer review, which will mean that you will have maybe other officers from another department that aren't connected with the case will look at the steps taken and see if it was sufficient. But obviously, we don't know. There's been no cause of death released with Mike Gain. Obviously, his body parts were found in the slurry tank. We don't know if they came in after the Garda search or before.
So was there was body parts found in the slurry tank and on the land where the slurry had been already spread?
Yes.
Yeah, it got caught in the, like the slurry, the machine that spreads the slurry.
And I suppose the big question in that case is, we do know that there have been some seizures around chainsaws, and the big question will be how he died. Was the dismembering of his body caused by machinery, and how he had been dumped, or was he dumped in that fashion? I mean, they're going to have to, I imagine, there's a lot of work being done on the bones.
Yeah, to be a very significant forensic effort, and all of that is hampered by the fact that he's clearly been in there a long period of time.
Yeah.
A slurry tank would be a chemical, basically a chemical laboratory with a lot of stuff in, and decomposure would be affected by all
But
of
the
that.
bones, surely,
It wouldn't. Yeah.
would I mean, bones can lie on the earth for years and years and years and still give up the secrets to someone's death. So
yeah.
It can.
I
I mean, all of
imagine-
that becomes operational issues as well.
Yeah.
It's not going to be released.
I think I know it all now, but forensic
yeah, but I
science
suppose
after doing my conference.
Yeah.
In the case of Tina Satchwell, though, they still couldn't determine the cause of death. And I suppose that was one of the questions that was brought up around if they had found, because they went in June. So she went missing in March 2017. And in June, they went into the house. And I think they noted a different colour at the stairs, or it did change in brick. But, they didn't go into the stairs. And then over 6 years later, they went down, and because of the decomposition, they couldn't find her cause of death.
They would have been able to rule out a cause of death from, they certainly were able to rule out that her hyoid bone wasn't broken.
They were.
And sometimes that hyoid bone is broken during strangulation.
Okay.
The bones were clearly intact.
Okay.
I think probably what happened with Tina Satchwell was she was either suffocated, wasn't she, or strangled in some way.
Yeah.
It was her airwaves were more than likely blocked, which killed her. But there was no marks on the bones. But had there been, the bones probably would have given them up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now, because there was a lot of talk of the dressing
big brain
gown.
on me since
I
the
know, yeah.
forensics.
No, you're right though. I mean, I think they say that bone is broken in 80% of strangulations,
Yeah.
but even then it's not.
It's
not
not
100%.
always broken, but
and he tried to say that she died when he, obviously this was
Yes.
disproven, but when she was holding her off with the belt of the dressing gown, which
Yeah.
would.
But that's obviously why he said it, like, because he's
obviously
such
why-
an oddball that
such
he
an
obviously
oddball,
thought that that's going to be caught.
I'll say that and they won't know otherwise, and that'll
Yeah.
be enough. But
Yeah.
he obviously did do, it was a neck constriction that killed her, I imagine. And then, of course, she was pulled. Do you remember the way the dressing gown cord was wrapped around her? And was it Dr. Margaret Bolster said she'd seen that in cases where a body had been moved, because it's really hard to move a body.
Yeah. So that was
like a dead weight or whatever.
Of course,
It's very hard
so
to.
then it was afterwards, after trial, the theory was put out that he used the belt to move her, as opposed to.
Oh, look, I mean, it's hard to imagine how human beings can do that to another human being. Kill them, bury them, forget about them, get on with their
Richard
lives.
Satchwell, and then go and do a load of interviews. I mean, it's so bizarre, because I mean, he could, I'm not saying
But
obviously.
there's other cases, Niall, as well, like Jojo Dollard, Annie McCarrick.
Yeah.
Somebody murdered them, has buried them, has hidden them somewhere, and has got on with their lives.
And some of them, of course, in those cases, and not to be very specific about them, they've got on and lived seemingly very normal lives, and not unsuccessful.
Families and all that stuff.
Yeah, so it hangs on, but the cases stick in the mind because murder is such an abnormal act. Do you know what I mean? For a woman to be killed in those circumstances without any sort of context. So that's why the public sticks with it. And one of the reasons Richard Satchwell was so unusual was because, even though he'd done this, he clearly knew he'd done it, and then he put her down and bricked it up or whatever else he'd done. He still went out and decided to talk about it, and also to sort of badmouth her and say, how dare she run off of me, she's breaking my heart, and
and continued through the trial by saying she was violent to him and that she was all that. Do you know, it's extraordinary when you think of, that case. For me, the Satchwell case is my big takeaway is how the hell did he get away with it? Because it was just so, it's like a 10-year-old sat down to write a story about
how to get away with murder.
And it was like, there was something very kind of obvious about him and obvious about the whole thing. And, of course she was bloody well in the house. Of course he'd killed her.
Yeah, but it was just so bizarre that it almost became so stupid that it almost almost worked, really.
But it worked for long enough for him, 6 years. Like, exactly, it was so stupid.
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly rocket science.
No, it's not sophisticated. It's not the perfect crime, the carefully planned perfect crime.
And yet he nearly got away with it and did for years and just, brazened it out. And
Yeah.
did you tell me that he had got himself a new woman.
We had a story from Eugene Masterson about how he had found what appeared to be a new romantic interest and was in a car with him and with her, yeah. And they, yeah. So, I mean, obviously at that stage he was
in a car doing what?
Well,
no, he was given a
in a
lift.
car.
He was driving.
I thought there was
Richard
something there
Satchwell
that I should.
Yeah, a
and
man
the
had been driving on it,
Yeah.
and he'd reported it ultimately to Gardaí.
That he was in a car with another woman.
Yeah, and he'd reported his
Right.
movements to the guards.
Yeah.
And the guards had taken note of it,
Yeah.
But obviously this woman would have known that he was, I don't know if he was being declared a public suspect, but definitely a public weirdo.
But he was no catch. I mean, how in the name of God, a public weirdo is right.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he really was.
At the very
Google
least.
him, exactly.
Yeah.
But it always amazes me, like, men can just seem to...
I don't want to be called, Niall's going to call me a man hater, but yeah, they always seem to land on their feet.
To God, they can have half the head, and like they seem to
I don't know
still...
why you're hating the men. I mean, the women have to go out with them. They can't do it on their own.
I know, but like you do
enough on a Friday.
Yeah, come on now.
They can't do it on their own.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So now we'll have to find an appropriate case to move on to after that. The one I have open is not.
Yeah.
So one of you pick something that caught your eye during the week.
Well, another one that have caught the eye, and some people might have seen the images going around on WhatsApp. I think they're too graphic to be put out, about a well-known criminal whose hand has been blown off as he attempted to throw a pipe bomb at a house. The guy who suffered the injury, be a known, very well-known criminal, very chaotic. He would have had associates who would have been linked to the sort of remnants of the Rattigan gang, which again have been in the paper, that sort of criminal or street dealing operation.
Been kind of feuding, and
they've been feuding, and whether this all fits into the pattern is not clear.
Yeah, so what happened? This guy went along to chuck a pipe bomb into somebody's gaff, and it went off in his house.
He went off in his hand. He arrived at a motorbike at a property in Coolock, took out the pipe bomb, and I think he lit it, and in which case it just exploded in his hand, So pipe bombs, I mean, we obviously spoke about them recently in relation to the one delivered by drone to a house in Finglas. They're very easy to construct. They're obviously primarily used to intimidate people rather than actually kill them.
Yeah.
But, there's just, while we've seen in recent years, the number of gangland murders has gone way down. I mean, it's really, really gone down, but the level of intimidation, I think, has gone up across Dublin and other places around the country. And the pipe bombs are a really efficient and easy way to do it, I suppose. And there's people producing them professionally. So look, it just shows you
sorry, like, it's graphic, obviously. I don't think I want to see it because I can never unsee those things when they're too graphic.
People
send me stuff all the time like that.
Yeah.
Oh, but anyway, so you can, let's talk about it instead. You can you can see is this grainy footage or can you see graphic? Who's taking the video?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it must be somebody, it's taken in the hospital.
Oh, taken in the hospital.
Yeah. And, you can see his hand is ruined, and obviously an injury like that is very, very life-threatening.
Gone?
Well, it doesn't look like it's recoverable. It's really, really serious injury,
Right. And how would his condition be with that?
It's serious injuries, wasn't it? Did he go himself to Beaumont Hospital and he's been treated there?
It's like a war injury.
It's like a war injury, yeah. It's but I mean, obviously,
amputation, like, essentially.
Well, you probably know more about that.
No, I mean, it's a life-threatening injury.
He knows everything about everything.
Well, that's what. Yeah, I just defer to it now.
No, I mean, we've seen it. We've seen a lot of these. Like, obviously, kneecappings were very much a prominent feature in the north in particular, but also down here. But they regularly led to, there's a lot of accidental deaths, if you want to put it that way. If you can call somebody being shot in the leg accidental, because, they bleed to death. And, of course, that's a very serious threat with an injury like that to the hand. It's just one of those.
People are taught how to kneecap, because they have to be able to do it without hitting an artery.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be from the back of the knee through without going through the cap of the knee, because there's less of a recovery period.
Yeah, and then go through muscle or whatever.
Story, wasn't it, that when Daniel Kinahan came to kneecap a young member of the Hutch organisation who had been accused of attempting to shoot him, he sort of double-crossed him and did it the way that would be more sort of difficult to the recovery process.
Yeah.
Ugh. I mean, the knee is a really complex thing. People who have hip replacements seem to have a really good recovery from them, and they say that's like having literally two new hips.
Yeah.
But the knee seems to be much more complicated.
Yeah.
That whole sort of joint, I suppose, the movement of it and everything, and the amount of pressure and weight you put on the knee, it's just hard to imagine. Imagine having both your knees done like that. And a hand is obviously going to leave him with a disability.
Yeah, leave permanent injury. I mean, an irrecoverable injury.
And people, of course, will say it serves him right for going to do that, and he lit the pipe bomb. He was going to cause other damage on it. But this will obviously be a big burden on the hospital system and the medical services and all, on top of everything else.
And rehab and all that kind of thing. Yeah. You wouldn't wish it on anybody, like, you know. So.
No. Anyway, in Boston, we have this firefighter, Terrence Crosby, who's up on trial, and we are going to hopefully speak with a court reporter next week, kind of in more detail, and maybe just get a little bit of an idea what it's like there in the court and everything. I don't think this case would be huge in the States or in Boston. Is it getting any coverage?
No, it is. It's getting a lot of coverage.
Is it?
I mean, it is for the reason that
he's a firefighter.
Well, it's a firefighter. Paddy's Day. Boston, of course, the Irish connection. You know, it's just one of those cases that you know, these cases are big across the country.
Firefighters are supposed to be heroes. They really are supposed to be, aren't they? You know, and especially in America, I suppose we have those, you know, indelible images of the firefighters around 9/11 and what they did and how they dragged survivors from the rubble and everything. And you don't expect, I suppose, a firefighter to be before the courts on these kind of allegations.
Yeah, I mean, the case is actually has been big news in the Boston Globe, one of the world's most famous newspapers. Have been there every day. It's been covered by local radio stations and has been from the start as well. So I suppose
how long is it going? About a week?
It's I think it started this week. So, but I mean, even the first appearances and all of that generated a lot of interest. Now, the case, obviously, we've covered. Terrence Crosby has pled not guilty. He's very strongly maintained his innocence from day one. We did hear, the opening statement where the witnesses or where the alleged victim's version of events was given out. We also then had a taped interview that Terrence Crosby had with the police the morning after that incident. That was also played in court. And on Thursday, there was more evidence given by experts. And I suppose the headline bit of that is that there was no DNA recovered.
That's the big headline this week, isn't it? So far in this trial, there was no DNA recovered. In actual fact, he'd been ruled out of he's been excluded from the profiles that were detected on the victim.
Yes, because she had because she had consensual sex with his roommate that night. So they found his profile, but they didn't find.
They just found one profile.
No, they found two profiles, which is our own profile and his.
Sorry,
profile.
I mean one other profile is what I mean. And they also tested the clothes as well. And obviously
no profile.
No profile, and they obviously did genital testing and the same.
And did they say in court she was wearing clothes at the time?
No, I think I think that's standard, isn't it? That they would test.
Well, they recovered. They recovered from her. They took the DNA from samples from her body.
Yes.
So not just from her clothes, but also from
because the detail of the case that we've been told so far through the court was that she had met them in a pub. She'd gone back to the hotel where Crosby was sharing with his roommate.
Liam
O'Brien, that she had had consensual sex with Liam O'Brien and that he'd fallen asleep in one bed and she had fallen asleep in another bed in the room and that Terrence Crosby, she claims, came back in and she awoke to find him on top of her raping her. So, there would be a lot of opportunities for DNA profiling around that bed and if he'd slept in the bed already, I suppose.
Yeah, and sorry, just in terms of the clothes, it was actually they tested his underwear,
his clothes,
and there was no, there was there wasn't any profiles there.
Okay.
You know.
Which would be her profile they'd be looking for there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He was excluded as a source of the profiles from the intimate samples as well.
And yet the state, whatever their DPP is, has still decided to bring these charges against him. So they're obviously confident. The state of their evidence, and the defence is confident in their. He is, of course, denying completely this. He's denying ever having had sex with the woman, and he's certainly denying rape. His wife is with him.
Yeah, his wife is supporting him in court. He's been in custody. So this was St. Patrick's Day in 2024.
Has he been in custody since then?
Yeah. So and he was actually one of the cases that they're trying to bring against him as well is that they breast him off a flight home, and they're trying to say, he was trying to, get out of America, but his defense has said, well, the reason that he was wanted to go home was because he was put through this questioning. He was told he was a free man, and he wanted to go home. He has a wife and children at home. Yeah. He wanted to go home, so that's what they're saying. But he's been held in custody since then. And
did he seek bail?
He sought bail.
He sought bail. Yeah.
Because I think this was seen almost as a flight risk because he tried to leave the country, was it?
Well, yeah, but it would have been used in evidence in the bail hearing to not give him because obviously he's not a resident of America. Yeah. And then the defence obviously said that he was just going home because he was told that he not told he could go home, but told he was free at that time. But yeah, the wife is supporting him, and there was evidence heard of that night of before the incident how he was seen in a bar kissing another woman, and then he obviously told how he returned to the hotel. I think the alleged victim and
Liam
O'Brien had came back. Then he left the room, and he says that he sat in another area of the hotel for a couple of hours and then went back to the room. And then it can be seen on CCTV that within a very short period of time, she leaves the hotel.
After he goes back into
the room, yeah.
Right. Well, look, we'll get a bit more detail on that case next week. And that trial will go on for a good few weeks, I imagine. A defendant doesn't have to give a case or place a case before the court, but they can give evidence. And it would look like a good idea maybe for him to give evidence in that case. So, what else, Colin?
Well, one of the ones that caught my eye now, and we don't approve of drug taking or anything like this, right? But an Irish guy, he's been jailed in the UK. He's 29 now, a guy called Aaron Godfrey, right? So he was caught with 30 MDMA tablets at Creamfields Festival when he was 21, so that's 8 years ago. And he fled back to Ireland. He got charged and he fled back to Ireland.
Right.
And he was going on holidays another time, and he discovered that he was arrested. There was an Interpol warrant out for his arrest.
Right.
Okay.
So he got arrested again, and it doesn't say exactly, but he landed himself basically back in police custody. That was 2022. He stopped on the way to Birmingham, and he got bail again.
Okay.
And he fled
again. Oh my God.
So then there was a red notice, an Interpol red notice, and he was on his way to Spain for a golfing holiday with friends, and he was picked up again, and he fought extradition. He was sent to the Netherlands, where the International Criminal Court ruled he should be sent to Britain to face the drugs charges.
International Criminal Court?
That's what it says.
How did he end up in front of the International Criminal Court?
Because he obviously resisted extradition. Right.
This is 30 E-tabs.
30 E-tabs 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So he was given a 6-month sentence in December 2024 for twice appearing to fail in court after fleeing the country. And now he was back in court on Wednesday, and he was handed a 2-year and 10-month sentence for the pills.
So he'd be long
2 years and 10 months.
Yeah.
He'd be long out if he had just...
And also, he might have got a suspended sentence at the time. So it's gone all the way...
Definitely would have. Yeah. And listen, are the prisons, how is he fixed in the UK? Are the prisons still jam-packed? We still let them out?
He might get out in a couple of days.
He might let them out.
But you want to hear that? I mean, look, I don't know. Are we allowed to feel sorry for him?
Is he one of those chaotic, one of Ireland's stupidest criminals or whatever?
I don't know. I mean, like he said, this is what the cop said at the end. Mr. Godfrey's defence was that the drugs he was found with for social supply to friends at a festival for no reward or payment, which doesn't not make sense. I mean, and the judge dismissed that. The police say they're glad he dismissed that. And they said what started as a relatively straightforward investigation relating to the sale of drugs at Creamfields turned into a 7-year operation that required several law enforcement agencies across several countries to work collaboratively to locate, arrest, and eventually bring Aaron Godfrey to justice.
Oh my God, it's like the worst hangover ever.
It is, isn't it? Absolutely.
It's almost like a movie.
It's worse than anything that happened at our summer party.
Speaking of which, Emer, because that's such a fabulous segue, I have been wanting to ask Coke drinkers, and I first of all want to ask you, what have you eaten and drank today?
So I had 4 sausage rolls, mini sausage rolls. And then, do you know what I went down to? I was going to get a chicken fillet roll, but I didn't have time. I had to go and get my dad a Father's Day present. So I got a Marks and Spencer sandwich, but I got the wrong one. So I ended up with ham and mustard. And then you text me and said, we're here. So then I only had half that. So I have Tato waiting for me upstairs, and then I'm going to get a curry later.
I was going to say batch bread for the Tato. This is real hangover food, Niall.
Yeah.
And the Coca-Cola sitting on the desk, which I've actually been sitting here like this, like I'm hanging for it.
Yeah.
I'll have to get myself one.
No, and
why
a curry
have they got
later.
names on the side
I
of
don't
them?
know. Holly's on this now.
Yeah.
I don't know any Holly's, but
Yeah, so you're going to go
You go get me a Colin one, no?
I'm gonna go look. Actually,
I am
next
so
time.
going to look
Next
for that.
time, I'm going to get you a Colin.
And
one.
anybody listening or watching this, if you happen to buy a Coke with Colin on the side of it, please drop it into me.
Again, I have to wonder why I tell these stories on this.
I think you love it though as well.
He secretly loves being called Colin. Anyway,
But you have
and
to be
thank you
nice
to
to
the
him
lady
as well.
who
'cause
called him Colin, because she'll give us days and weeks and years of entertainment with that
I
one.
know, but his fans are going to feel sorry for him now, because did I tell you about a few weeks ago when we were there was a fire drill. And we were outside on the street, on Talbot Street, and a nice lady at Super Value stopped Niall and said, you're great on the podcast, and I watch you on YouTube every day. And I was joking. I said, don't give him a bigger head than he already has. And she turned around and said, you give him an awful hard time. Yeah, she did. She kind of said you. I don't know if she was talking about you or she knew who.
Both of us, I'd say.
Yeah, probably both of us. But and I was like horrified.
That's sympathy from
That's what I
older
mean.
ladies.
So you should see. This is what you should adopt. Nicola's attitude. She's amused. She doesn't care.
No, but then I'm thinking, God, is it like? Because are we actually adding to his popularity by being hard?
No,
maybe
you
we
have
start
to
being nice
embrace your villainy.
I have
you're
to
not.
say-
You're not Snow White. You're the evil stepmother or whatever.
Oh,
Niall, embrace your villainy. I like that. I feel like I should be wearing a cape here.
yeah.
I'm
I'm actually jealous of your hoodie today.
I know, because the air conditioning, I complained the other day and the air conditioning wasn't working. It's now like we're sitting in an ice box and we're like this. But what I wanted to say to you was, there is
Cut
a
this
kind
bit out
of...
now. I don't even want this. Just already this has to be edited. Go on.
There is a kind of a certain type of a lady that...
Cut this out, right? This isn't going on. This isn't going to make it.
I think it should be.
Thank God it's at the
whoever
end of a
cuts this
50-minute podcast that's waffly.
Yeah.
So hopefully most people have turned off.
No,
But
we're
go
not
on,
gonna turn this
Nicola.
off.
Say what you have to say.
So there's a certain type of a lady that finds you, that wants to mother you. Is that what it is?
Well, you have to take whatever attention you can get,
they
Nicola.
like
Whatever.
to mother you, though, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't understand the instinct.
They
Nicola,
watch
but
you on television at night, and they want to kind of. It's a little bit like. Do you remember the movie Misery? There's someone out there who wants to take him, break his arms and legs, tie him to a bed, and just feed him.
Look,
Or something.
He's been stopped in the street as well.
Satchwell can pick up
Yeah, well, there you
bit
go.
of interest, surely I can.
There you go.
And with that, we will end it in case he turns the tables on either of us, Emer.
I know,
So-
yeah.
Your remarkable, successful record in the areas of romance.
No comment.
We've very
Both
bad
yous,
taste.
both yous.
Yeah,
Very, very bad taste. Okay. Right. I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.